All right, my name is Deke Smith, and I'm with the National Institute of Building Sciences in Washington, D.C., and that's really the location where the buildingSMART Alliance is located. And buildingSMART Alliance, just a little background, it's actually the U.S. chapter of a larger organization, buildingSMART International. I want to thank Alan and all the people that made this possible today. I think this is a great opportunity for everybody here. And first of all, I really want to say it's great to be in Ireland. Thank you. So my background a little bit is, I worked for the government for 30 years. And you could say, oh, you know, that taints me a little bit. But I think what's interesting about working for the government, and I also volunteered for the National Institute of Building Sciences for about 20 years. I retired from the government after 30 years. But I started out, even before I worked for the government, on the dumb end of a chain as a surveyor. And I don't know, you know, surveying has changed so much now that I don't even think there's a dumb end of a chain anymore. And I guess the other question, you know, how many remember the first time you got a calculator? And, you know, okay. And do you remember when you first got that calculator? I mean, we're talking about change here. The first time you got a calculator, you went and checked that math, you know, by hand. Yeah, and that's, you know, that's the kind of, you know, we're going through that significant change here. And I think what's happening really with BIM and all of this is that, you know, it's an enabler for change. We still have to be the ones to change. And there was a book written a long time ago, Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge, and he said, people seek change but don't want to be changed. And I think you have to also think that, you know, you've got to be able to go through this process and understand how it's all going to happen. So what I want to talk today about is just three simple things. One is, what is the changing role of architects? And being an architect myself, that's kind of the way I can think about things and address things. But I want you can, whatever your job is, put your name in that position. There's a changing role that has to happen right now. And there's a profound change that we have to undergo. The second part is looking at Lifecycle. We've talked about Lifecycle for my full career, you know, 20, 30 years. We've talked about having Lifecycle in place, and yet it still hasn't happened. And why is that it hasn't happened? And then, why should we care about standards? We talk about standards and things like that, but why should we really care about that at all? And what I want to do today is kind of reverse the order of this. Because I think ultimately it's the people, it's the culture, and how people are going to change that's ultimately going to make the difference in how all this really occurs, how this change occurs. I think standards are important because they're the glue that allows us to talk. You know, just the fact that I'm speaking in English and everybody can understand me in English, whatever your mother tongue is, you know, you've learned English and so you do understand that. And so that's allowed us to have a lot of communication worldwide. All the work with buildingSMART is done in English. So whether we're dealing with people in China, and there's a Chinese chapter, there's chapters throughout Asia and Australia, there's chapters in Middle East, there's chapters all through Europe. So that kind of is one aspect. The other thing is, ultimately we'll get to a point where we really don't care about standards. You know, you have a cell phone, and I dare say that you could probably not name very many of the standards that are in there, but there's a lot of standards in that to make that work. So ultimately we really won't care, but initially we have to care, and somebody has to care to put those standards in place so those things like cell phones work. And then lastly, like I say, we'll talk about the architects. So overall, you know, what we've found, I think over the years, is it's really all about the data. You know, that's kind of the number one thing. It's, you know, we talk about the different software packages, and that's always the easiest decision to make, you know, which software package I'm going to go out and buy. And in the long run, you know, what we want to do is think much longer term. One of the things that bothers me in the United States about, there's a program that the American Institute of Architects promotes called Integrated Project Delivery, IPD. And the problem with that, in my mind, is that last word. It's delivery. You know, they really only care about delivering the project. But there's a life to that project after all, and we have to really, as a community, as the AEC community, if you will. I guess I'll ask, is anybody an owner in this room? Okay, there's a couple. And I'll talk a little bit about that because I think that's one of the issues of who even is the owner. But one of the things that happened to me when I was early on in my career, and we were going through this, we went through this whole process one time with CAD. And CAD was, we thought, oh my gosh, the world's falling apart, we're implementing CAD, it's changing everything. But now we look back at CAD, and CAD really wasn't much of a change. All we did was automate an existing process. We didn't really change how we did business in the grand scheme of things. We automated how we were doing drafting, and we didn't really change that. So one of the things we did, we had, and I was working for the Navy at that point in time, and we had racks and racks and racks of 9-track tapes. And those tapes, we were going to move to a new office. And I said, and they said, what do you want to do with all these? Should we move them? And I said, well, in reality, no. I think we should, we need to throw them away. Because we no longer have a 9-track tape drive. All the data was stored in computer vision, and we didn't have any computer vision anymore. Now we had AutoCAD. And we didn't have, and so we didn't have any money to translate it all to anything new. So that was a real eye-opener to me, and I said, okay, I never want to be in that situation again. Because literally, we probably threw away billions of dollars worth of information. And that's the thing, we have to put a value on information. So how do you solve that problem? I think there's 3 things you do. One is you really focus on having international standards. International standards last. They're around for a long time. And that's why we're promoting IFC, okay? The second thing is you have to store the geometry some way. And another ISO standard happens to be PDF. One of the, there's several versions of PDF, and there's also 3D PDF, which isn't yet an international standard. I hope someday it does become one. But, and then the third thing is being able to store information in the cloud. So the bottom line is, hopefully everybody is using IFC or working towards trying to use IFC. If we develop things for each one of the major vendors out there, first of all, it's not just the major vendors that are involved. There's 100 different software packages out there. And so the thing is that what we want to do is be able to communicate between all of them. And yes, IFC does work. There's a lot of examples out there where it does work. The software implementations of IFC haven't been great in the past. And now we have a thing called, through the buildingSMART International, we have a thing called Certification 2.0, which many of the major vendors have now gone through and passed. And so that kind of leads us into being able to use that. And the thing is that if we replicate our efforts for all these different software packages, that's waste. And the other thing we want to cut out of this whole process is waste. It's non-value added effort. Anything that we're doing that doesn't lead to an end product, shouldn't be there anymore. And we have to think through each time we look at a process and things like that, how can we get the waste out of it? Am I the one that really created this information, or did somebody else create it and I'm recreating it? And so what we want to do is find who is the actual authoritative source for that information. Who created it the first time? And let's go back and get it from there instead of recreating it ourselves. And that also requires a building of a level of trust in doing that. Another one of the projects that the buildingSMART International is working on is called the buildingSMART Data Dictionary. And the data dictionary is now finally coming of age, and there's been a lot of work that's been put on it. One of my colleagues, Brigitte Foster, has been heading up a group of 8 different countries that are working on this. And what we're looking at is not only the things that a dictionary does and as far as definitions and things like that, but one of the things is if I put a CMU into a model and you're looking for a concrete masonry unit or a concrete block, you're not going to find my CMU. So the thing is that what we have to do is be able to have the synonyms in there also. And also certainly translate to other languages. We can certainly do that. A lift is the same thing as an elevator and those kind of things. But in addition, now we can also do find information using the dictionary. What information's in a project? And there's a new project that's just getting started, looking at just looking at one project and building a dictionary around one project. But ultimately what we want to do is build a large dictionary, and there's other countries are putting money into this. So this is again a situation where we can leverage resources. We can put a little bit of money in and get a much larger product back. And that's the other thing I think we need to look at as we go through this. So one of the tools, and I think probably everybody's heard of it now, is COBE, Construction Operations Building Information Exchange. And what I've liked about COBE since the first time I saw it was it does really two things, very important things. One is it keeps information in a usable form. Okay, we've had a tremendously bad habit of putting information in either, we have information, and almost every piece of information now is created electronically at some point in time. But what happens is we turn it into paper, or we turn it into a PDF. And when we do that, the information, we lose a tremendous amount of information. And so what we want to do is keep it in an electronic format as we go through. The other thing we do is the other thing that COBE does is it allows information to flow. And it's one of the few products that we have out there where information actually flows. It starts during design with a submittals registry, and it goes through and collects information during construction with the intent of giving it to the facility manager. And that's one of the things we're looking at now is how do we make sure that the information we deliver is something that the facility manager can use. They don't want just a fire hose of information of, they don't want just an electronic, a model. They want what information do we need to be able to operate this facility. And ideally we can give that to them in a form that is usable to be able to put into a management program to manage their workflow and things like that, an IMWIM's package, to be able to manage their work orders as they go and things like that. And that's going to be another advantage that comes out of all of this, is being able to use this information as we go through, again, over the life cycle. Again, I go back to the work with the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense has 570,000 facilities in the United States. 340,000 of those are buildings. So, the Corps of Engineers probably has about 200,000 of those that they manage and they work with. And the thing is that every one of those projects is developed by a private sector A&E firm and a private sector construction firm, and they're different ones. So one of the things that the various agencies are asking for, and we've got a lot of different agencies in the United States, there's actually 22 different federal agencies that have construction responsibility. So that's the other thing that's kind of nice, is some of them are large, some of them are small, and it's easier to work with the small ones first. So you'll see a lot of things come out of things like VA, Veterans Administration. They put together a guideline that's being used that, in fact, got used by, that's the what the Australians use for their BIM guide, is they just took that and modified it a little bit. And that's one of the other things, again, what we want to do is be able to take advantage of what other people in the world are doing. Don't reinvent this stuff, especially don't reinvent IT, information technology, because there's other programs that have gotten us solved a lot of the problems that we're wrestling with. One of them, I guess I should say also right now, is the metadata. Metadata is just data about data. What we need to know is who created the information, when they created it, for what purpose they created it, and things like that. Like if you look at a cost estimate and you see a number in a cost estimate, you don't know what that number really is after it was created. And so everybody redoes cost estimates. One time they said basically there's as many as, in the United States anyway, because we don't have quantity surveyors, over 300 estimates are done on each project. And that's because everybody goes out and does an estimate when they go out and do the bid, and then as they're going, all the subs do estimates. Every time you do a change order, you do an estimate, and all these kind of things that go through that. So there's, but the thing is that once that number's there, if you don't have any metadata attached to it, you don't know whether it was a historical cost, whether it was a square foot cost or square meter cost. You don't know whether it was, a final quote from some supplier. And so what you need to do is attach information, and that attached information will also help build our team. We've got to have a team that makes all this work, because what we need to do is have trust, have confidence in the information that other people create. And you live on a normal day, you go through and you trust a lot of information that comes from other people. We don't necessarily do that so much in our industry. Everybody feels like, well, somebody else created it, I'm responsible for this part of it, so I better recreate all this information. And that's waste again, that's non-value added effort. So one of the things I want to look at is kind of looking at this whole life cycle concept. When I first started, I worked for the government for a while, and then I went private sector for a while, and then I went back to the government. And when I was with the private sector for a while, I was working in the value management division of a group called Smith, Henchman & Grills. And one of the things we were doing there is life cycle and value engineering. And we were trying to do value engineering where it's supposed to be done early in the design phase, not where it's being done currently, out in late construction when you're just trying to figure out how to cheapen the cost of the building. But the concept of life cycle, and I think what the problem is, very often we have like a number that we have, well, this is the life cycle cost of this product. And I think what we need to do is break that out into what happens on a yearly basis. How long does that product, what kind of maintenance has to be done on that product on a routine basis? How often does it have to be replaced? In some cases, things can be replaced that you don't want it to last more than 5 years. See, in retail, you're going to change things out and everything, so you really don't need it to last much longer than that. But a lot of the other things, you want them to last longer. And so it depends on what kind of facility you're dealing with and those kind of things. But you need to know that. I mean, it's as simple as I'm on the board of directors of our homeowners association, and we did a reserve study, what's called a reserve study. And what happens is it goes out and says every 5 years we have to re-white coat the swimming pool. Every 20 years we have to rebuild the walls of the swimming pool. And we did this because the first time we had to go out and rebuild the walls of the swimming pool, it was a couple $100,000 fee, and we didn't have that set aside. So now what we do is we know how much money we have to collect from each homeowner every year to be able to take care of those long-range costs that we know are going to come. We know how long generally how long it's going to take before you have to replace a roof. We know how long it's going to take before you have to replace a chiller. And it's interesting, you look at other industries, you look at things like the electronics industry, computer industry and things like that. They have mean time between failure of the different products. It's really hard to find mean time between failure on the different products we have in construction. But why not? Why can't we demand that and say, how long is this product going to last? And the problem is, there's nobody really asking for that information right now because we really aren't looking at it at that point. We're focused, typically AEC is focused on delivery of the project and not what the life cycle is. And my contention is that it also allows you to really kind of go in take a longer term vision of what your job is, other than, just, okay, I deliver this project, now I go on to the next project. We'll talk about that as we go. The other thing I think that I see the opportunity, again, going back to an organization place we can probably start is, again, going back to something like the Corps of Engineers with their 200,000 facilities. I'd like to go out and do some data mining there. They happen to use IBM Maximo, a lot of it, and so, and it doesn't really matter though, because what we've done with COBE is we've gone through with the COBE challenges, and we've shown how, and again, it goes back to the data. Remember, it's all about the data. So how do we get out and find information, if they're tracking their work orders and they're tracking how many times they have to replace a piece of equipment and how many times they have to change the filter and, do all these other checks, if they're, scheduling all that and keeping track of all that, we should be able to go out and data mine that. And data mining has become a big issue, as everybody I think is aware now, where you can go out and find information in just massive amounts of information. You go out to Amazon or something like that and you go out and take a look at, I took a look at a watch one time. I've been getting watch ads now for like 2 years, okay, because they found that that's what I was looking for and interested in, and I hadn't bought one yet, so I must still be interested. And so those kind of things, those we can use that for our advantage instead of the other things that happen out there. And I guess the other thing too is, as we go through with this with a life cycle, is let's build a knowledge base. Let's learn from our experiences. Right now what ends up happening is, and I've heard this happen, that that a designer goes in and says, well, I got you a train model 1, 2, 3, 4 because I saw you had a lot of train 1, 2, 3, 4s on your installation, and I figured this will help you make, help you with your maintenance and everything. Well, you come talk to the guys maintaining this equipment, and they say, oh, that's the biggest piece of trash that we have. We're trying to get rid of those. We can't maintain them. We can't get the parts and all this kind of stuff. And so the thing is that what you have to do is go out and find, what is the best products, and learn from that. So you spec those for the future. And it doesn't matter whether it's just one agency or one organization. We can do this across the whole industry. And so we're kind of we set our own agenda, we set our own direction of where we want to go with all of this. What we've been trying to do with buildingSMART International is get a scope on how big this whole issue is. And we put this chart together a while ago, and basically it just goes through and says, okay, there's things that happen during design, there's things that happen during procurement, there's things that happen during assembly, and we call it assembly instead of construction because of all the off-site work that's being done now, and then operations, what happens during operations. And so each one of these boxes actually ends up breaking up into multiple pieces. And so, for example, like one example there is structures. Well, we have steel structures, we have concrete structures, we have precast structures, we have timber structures. And so we've got to be able to go through and look at how we do business in each of those areas. AISC, American Institute of Steel Construction, is probably one of the best ones to look at because they had a standard out there that they've used for several years now. It's called CIS2. And CIS2, they realized that only worked for steel construction, but they used it for steel construction all the way through fabrication. They delivered information to the fabricator so that and there's some incredible pieces of equipment now that are out there that there's a thing called Beam Master that goes through and grabs a whole wide flange section, brings it in, starts drilling holes in it, and grabs pieces and welds them on and all this kind of stuff. Take a look at, there's a video out there on the internet and YouTube. It shows you how some of the advancement has gone in that area. But what they realized is that buildings are more than just steel. So that's why they're shifting all over to the international standard, 160739, yeah. And so because they need to be able to interface with all the other parts that are out there. So, going back to the architect now, getting into the real meat of this whole thing, this is, I certainly don't expect you to read that. I can't even read it even from here. But the point is, how many of you are familiar with a pro forma? Okay. A pro forma is what the owner uses to figure out whether or not they want to make an investment. And a lot of it goes into, how much we want to produce this product. How many people are we going to have to produce this product? How much, what's the process? What equipment do we have to create to make this product? And also, what kind of facility do we need for this product? And the reality is that the facility cost up there is like minuscule compared to the process that they're building. Look at Guinness, okay? You know, the amount of the amount of people that they have, the amount of the equipment that goes into it, that's where the cost is. That's where it's what's inside the building that we're creating is where the costs are. And so again, as a designer, we have the opportunity, if we can cut out 1 or 2 people, that has huge long-term impact on this pro forma, on what kind of profit ultimately they're going to make. And so that's the challenge we have, is really going through and being able to say, you know, what can we do as designers to be able to affect how they're going to do business? And that's really where our true value comes into play. And that's where I think we're not even really talking to the right people right now, unfortunately, is one of our problems. You know, we might be talking to the owner's rep, you know, and that's after they've already decided this is how much we're going to spend on the facility, this is what percentage we're going to spend on design, and this is what we're going to spend on construction. And the thing is, we have to get to them much earlier. So what the problem right now is that the architect, and I could say this for any of the, you know, AE side of the house, is not very well prepared to talk to the owner right now. They're the first person to talk to the owner, and they're the ones that need to be able to define what it is, what are opportunities there are from BIM. All the opportunities for the life cycle. What's the value of delivering a more information-rich facility to an owner? And that's the discussion that needs to happen. But we're not prepared for that. So the key is we have to go back and we have to revamp how we're going to teach people. How we're going to, and this isn't just the schools, but it's also all the associations. How do we teach people to be part of a team? How do we teach people to, you know, what it takes to make profound change to improve how we've been over what we've been doing business historically? So, you know, overall, it's just, you know, how do we build models? How does a designer build a model that a contractor can use? That's an issue right now. The designers are not building models that the contractor can use. So the contractor throws it away, and you have, you know, big companies like Skanska and stuff like that, they're going to say to the owner, don't even have the designer build a model for me. I'll just build it, and oh, by the way, give me the fee too, that you were going to give to the architect and the designer, and I'll just build this model for you. And that's, you know, we've lost a whole opportunity there. And I say we can turn that whole thing around and really say, here's the opportunities that you get out of a BIM, here's the things that, you know, for the life cycle, and we want to work with you throughout this life cycle. We're not going to abandon you as soon as we hand over the building, because we want to be the ones in place to help you with that information issue as it goes forward. And, okay, be in the right place at the right time when you're ready to do an addition or expand your building or make any modifications or anything like that, or your next building. Yeah? And the thing is that's more the mode that the designers really need to be in. So with that, I will say thank you. And I encourage everybody to enjoy the rest of the show, and thank you very much.